Well, hello, everybody. Well, we're back in the kitchen, but actually, it's such a beautiful day here in Michigan, 70 degrees. Can you believe it? So, we were out doing some yard work. We pulled up the final stalks of celery left in the garden, and I was perfecting an apple pie recipe and getting ready to go in there and make some sauerkraut from the remaining cabbages. And it's just been glorious. And we have had the most amazing conversations in the last few days with some of the AIM cats that have called us and know our phone number. It's so good that I've invited some of them to keep the topic in their heads and join us in a kitchen conversation sometime. So looking forward to that. But today we're going to turn our attention to a little something that happened with Patricia, who is in Hawaii. She had left a comment under one of our Substack audios and was talking about Douglas as an exorcist, which he is, people. This isn't something in my imagination or yours. Douglas was trained as an exorcist, and he has been trying his best to exorcise the evil that we see in the world today. And thank goodness all of you are also helping in that regard. But anyway, Patricia wrote, and she was asking for that next level that she could do herself to get rid of the evil around her. And I, after reading her note, I suggested that maybe I could send her a second-class relic from the spear, the Holy Lance of Love. What I have here for people who feel that they need this item, we have small handkerchiefs that we place on the Holy Lance of Love. And by doing so, we have made a second-class relic out of the item. And then I'm happy to mail it to you, as long as the mailing isn't too far and too expensive. But I'm happy to do that for any of you out there. You just need to email me, let me know that you'd like one, and give me your address. Let me continue on because Patricia received hers, and this is what she had to say about it. Aloha, Tyla. I have been having a very positive experience since you mailed me the relic. First, I have a sustained energy boost. This is powerful. Second, my spiritual channels have been reawakened, and I see and feel the relic and its energy as it moves through time and space. As it moves towards me, I see it removing blockages between us and around me and in me. This relic carries manifestation qualities and hence greater clarity. I am more connected to your work. I believe the increased energy and clarity is helping me relax and remember our working together in past lives, this life, future lives. We are sitting in the kitchen planning the women's right to vote movement. Well, that's funny. She continues and says, now about Douglas, it appears to me that the relic is carrying a message from Douglas. I saw him in his study and am grateful that there is so much and nothing else I can say, soul to soul and heart to heart. I asked the Holy Lance of Love to send me a blessing as I was falling asleep, and I slept so well. And she continues on with some personal comments about her life on the Big Island. Well, Patricia, I have discussed this before. The time that we received the spear, I was very doubtful about it. I just thought it was some artifact that somebody had picked up somewhere, who knows. But I was happy to have it, put it on my dresser, and just left it be. Decided to let it speak to me if there was anything to be said. And after a few days, I walked by the spear and felt a heat coming from the area. And in fact, I thought my dresser was going to get a burn hole in it. So I walked over to touch the tip of it, and it was very hot. And it was one of those experiences that you want someone else to witness with you, because in time it could just fade away and you would think, wow, did that really happen? So I called Douglas in, and he touched the spear, and he also felt the heat coming from it. Now, as I had my hand on that, what I felt, I don't know this to be true, but it's what I felt, is that I was receiving some kind of transmission, and that transmission of information would be unpacked over time. So thank you for your note, Patricia. And now let's turn to Douglas and see what amazing things you have to say to us, Douglas, about relics.
Well, for sure, with relics, it's a big question. And some people would say that they don't do anything, and other people swear by them. Of course, a Catholic priest can't say Mass unless he has a relic on the altar, and the relic has to be verified from the Catholic Church. But in terms of what standard parishioners might do out there, you get the St. Benedict's medal. And St. Benedict's medal has on it the letters, the acronym for a exorcism prayer. So if you wear this St. Benedict's medal, matter of fact, when you get it, you simply have to say, may the blessings of St. Benedict and the other host of saints and angels bless this medal. And it literally is an exorcism of evil, and it keeps you away from you. And it's been used traditionally since the time of St. Benedict, who, of course, created the Benedictine order, which, of course, I was first involved in that. So essentially, it's the same kind of prayer you'd get in the name of God the Father, the Almighty, who made heaven and earth and the seas and all that is in them. I exercise these metals against the power and attacks of the evil one. May all who use these metals devoutly be blessed with health of soul and body, in the name of the Father, the Almighty, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Paraclete, and the love of the same Lord Jesus Christ, who came on the last day to judge the living and the dead and the world by fire. So it's a simple prayer, and it's actually, prayer is basically inscribed in an acronym on it with the initials of the letters. So you wear that because literally you do need to keep evil away from you. You know how you wear a garlic to keep the vampires away from you? Well, you wear something blessed, and particularly blessed in the name of Jesus Christ. As we talked about recently in the interviews with an exorcist, it is only by the power of Christ that you can cast a demon out. No human has the power to do that. And so if you aren't in alignment with the Holy Spirit and with God the Father, the Trinity, with Christ, and if you have not prayed and fasted, then you can't even attempt it unless you're a fool. And by fool, I mean the biblical meaning of a fool. You have no association with the divine. So you're a fool if you try, as a priest who is basically, let's say, living in sin, and then you try an exorcism, you're just going to make it worse on you and the other person. But if you wear a St. Benedict's medal, this has been a tradition, and so many people have believed in this and put so much energy into this sigil, because that's what it is. It's a set of symbols and words that are a prayer. And basically, that sigil is exactly what an exorcist uses to cast out a demon. For instance, if you find that the demon is Asmodeus or Baphomet or whatever demon it is, they have symbols that were created by Solomon. So you go to the lesser and greater seals of Solomon and you'll find those sigils. Those sigils are the gesture that the exorcist would make when they're in the circle of blessing, to once they have found out the name of the being, and then you call the being out, and you then, once you separate that being and they're speaking to you, you can then have a real communication with the person, because the being is risen out of them to a certain degree, out of their astral body. And if you can address the etheric body and figure out why it happened and get the person who's possessed to understand that they can let this go now, it'll happen. But only if the person doing it is pure. Now, we have one of the greatest relics that there is, the spear of love, the spear of Antioch.
Which, may I add, you have deliberately placed it in some of your videos when you're talking about the exorcism for the purpose that you just described, to have a relic, a holy relic with you for the exorcism.
Yes, and a true exorcist will carry a relic with them, and they'll put it in their stole at the base of their neck. And that relic will then bless them as they're doing this official sacramental rite of casting out of demons, or diabolic possession, as they call it. But there's all kinds of possessions. There's obsessive astral possession. There's just simply egotistic possession, possession by Lucifer, possession by Ahriman, which really are obsessions more than they are diabolic possessions or demonic possessions. But when we're talking about the spear of Longinus, or the spear of Antioch, it was used to basically win Jerusalem for the First Crusade. And once they found this, it was amazing. The person who found it said, "Oh, all you have to do is take this spear and put it at the front of the battle and go into battle barefoot." Now, this sounds insane, but it seems as if it's true, because it wasn't just at Antioch that they went into battle barefoot. They went into battle in Tyre, and in Sidon, and then in Jerusalem, and then in a city, well, basically a battlefield outside of Jerusalem. And supposedly, this spear was held before all of them as the banner of Christ to basically defeat the Muslims who had basically come into control of Jerusalem. And literally, then the Christians established the king of Jerusalem. Now, they had to fight again and again because it was lost and gained and lost and gained. But the point is, this particular spear is a blood relic. When you want to talk about the Holy Grail, the stories of the Holy Grail, the real ones, point out that floating through the air in the procession of the Grail, the very first thing is a spear. And that spear drips blood from its tip. And then one of the Grail maidens catches it either on a platter or in a chalice. And think about that. What is that? That's the blood of Christ. And so any relic, whether it be the thorn of crowns, the cross, the nails, any of these things that are purported to sometimes manifest during an exorcism, of course, those aren't the real thing, but they represent it. And so do we really have the pieces of the cross that people think? It doesn't really matter, because technically it is the belief that people put into them that creates the magic. It isn't the magic of specifically a piece of cross that, remember, the Christians didn't find it. St. Helen went there, the mother of Constantine, and they basically went to a rubbish heap that was the place of the skull, or Calvary. And in this rubbish heap, they found the nails, they found the cross, they found the thorn, they found the thorn of crowns, all these things, and they gave them to Helen, and she brought them back, of course, to Constantinople and ultimately to Rome. So are we saying that those are real? It doesn't even matter. That's what I'm saying. It does not matter, especially if, as Michael McKibben always points out, if it was turned into a second tier, a first, second, or third tier relic. If they really believed it was the absolute one, then they would touch other things to it, similar to it. For instance, the spear of Maurice. The spear of Maurice was given by the Pope Leo, to Charlemagne, actually Charlemagne's father, but Charlemagne ended up with it. And essentially, we know for a fact that that's a copy. We know because scientists have tested it, dated it. We know exactly when it was given, and we know that it is a copy. Does that make it any less powerful?
Well, it's not a copy in the way it looks.
Correct. It's not a copy in the way it looks. Matter of fact, the whole idea of the spear of Maurice, which then there are two copies of it, of that spearhead, is not the spearhead of a centurion. And it certainly would not, and remember, Longinus was the centurion who was in charge of watching Jesus for his 3 years of ministry, keeping an eye on him. And in the end, he pierced the side of Christ in mercy so that they wouldn't break all of his limbs, which is what they would do to make sure that the death would be expedited. So when Longinus pierced the side of Christ, some say the blood went into his eyes and he could see because he was blind. Well, of course he wasn't blind. And the blood going in his eye, well, that was the etheric blood. And he did open his eyes, his spiritual eyes. And then he became the protector of Mary and Joseph of Arimathea and the disciples. And there's been many traditions in Anatolia, in Turkey, where Mary and the disciples all went along with Longinus and Joseph of Arimathea, basically stating that there's like Demetrius, like Fernarius, like St. George. These are people who took that concept of the spear and made it something sacred. When you go on the path to Christ, you're coming out of being a soldier, a killer, to someone who defends the weak and defends their enemies and learns to love. And so it's a beautiful thing. So when we placed a handkerchief on the spear, or you place anything on a first-tier relic, a true relic, then it transfers that energy to everything that it touches. And this is very well known. Padre Pio, one of the greatest healers of all time, he would simply have people send him a handkerchief. He would bless it, send it back to them, and they'd be healed. One day I was walking in someone's house, and all of a sudden I just got overwhelmed. And I looked over at this chest of drawers and said, "What in the world is in this top drawer?" And the person started crying and said, you can feel that? I said, I can feel that. And then I started describing it. And she says, this was given to me as a child when they thought I was going to die. It is a handkerchief from Padre Pio. Well, the same thing happened with Father Linus, the saint who was in Detroit. He would send out handkerchiefs to people to heal them. So we got handkerchiefs and got a holy card made and put it on the spear and give it out to people. And people have remarkable responses to that. Same thing happens with holy water or chrism oil. Once it's been blessed, and remember, it's blessed on an altar, and when it's been blessed on an altar with a relic from a saint, then it supposedly has this power to carry on the communion of saints, it's called. And so you're aligning yourself with a certain type of higher spiritual vibration, and these relics, it doesn't even matter because no one believes that those are pieces of the cross. But everyone believes the healings that come from them. And so if you added up all the pieces of the cross in Europe, you would have a huge cross. If you added up all of the supposed holy grails that were at the Last Supper of Christ, literally, there are hundreds of them. Now, are any of them real? I'm not even going to make a statement about whether they're real. Most people would say they're not. That's not the point. If a sensitive person can feel the healing force coming off of it, that's probably because other people have revered it and they put their good positive energy into it. And then it's able to hold that energy because it's sacramental and give it out to anybody who then comes to witness it later. This is true with everything in life. If you take a little crystal and you meditate and you say, many, 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 many times, the power of Christ's love is in this crystal. It will be if you're a pure soul. And so that's what really relics are. It's the attention of pure souls put into sacramental objects that then have the power to heal and transform others.
Well, I hear you about that. But then when we received the spear, Michael was very interested and did a thorough background research on it and found the provenance. It does go back to the spear of Antioch. And we have that research online. The spear of Antioch was reported to be the spear that pierced the side of Christ. And the museum has looked at the spear and it given us a report that it does come from the 1st century, is a Roman 1st century hosta in super duper condition. Douglas can speak more about that. But I'm going to push back and say, no, this is not just one of those relics you described. That this relic has the vibration and the resonance of the blood of Christ. And it's the blood of Christ that is so important in our day and time. It is the blood that went into the earth. Yes, it's a remarkable relic, Douglas.
Yes, and the blood of Christ, the Holy Grail is about the blood mysteries. Everything that touched the blood of Christ became sacred, and Mary turned it into, of course, the Stations of the Cross when she went to Ephesus. And as you go around the Stations of the Cross, you're literally praying for that which was shed for the sake of all mankind, Christ's blood. And so the Holy Grail mysteries are really a Christian version that the pagans took, turned it into something a little bit different. But when it's all the original stories of the Holy Grail, which were told in Europe, have everything to do with the blood of Christ. And so Mary was the keeper of that. So when we're dealing with this cross, when we're dealing with this spear that stabbed the side of Christ while he was on the cross, you're dealing with one of the most powerful tools that some people worshiped it so they could get the power of it. And then and that's what Hitler did. And that's why there's multiple copies of this. There's a copy in the reliquary of the Habsburgs in Vienna. There's another copy in parts of one in Rome. There's another copy in Armenia. There's a copy in Poland. And so all these different copies still had a lot of power.
Copies, but they're not copies. They are items that have been created and been designated to be the spear. They're not. And they certainly don't look like a 1st century Roman hosta.
No, they don't look like that at all. And yes, so we're not talking about copies. We're talking about replicas that weren't exact replicas, that may have been, because it seems as if the Catholic Church may have had in its possession the spear of Longinus in the reliquary of the Habsburgs when it was in Nuremberg. Matter of fact, I have found pictures of it there, but I don't believe that they knew what it was. So did they use that spear to basically create second tier, third tier relics? I don't know. We don't know that for sure. But we do know that this happens all the time, that they will take a piece of the cloth of Mary and touch it to other pieces of cloth and then put those in reliquaries and spread them throughout the world. And people literally are healed by these things. We told you the story where Bobby and John and I were looking at the icon of St. Fernarius, but a big blue bolt of lightning went out of my hand to a reliquary that was way off to the side. So I went over and looked at it, but I knew immediately that it had a piece of the cloth of Mary. Is that possible? Yes, that's very possible. Very possible, because she would have been definitely venerated, and any of the blood relics she had would have been venerated. So are there real relics that touch the blood of Christ? I think there probably are, and that it can't be proven because the provenance may not be as clear as you might think or you might wish. That's really not a problem to me, because when a clairvoyant can go and be near these things, for instance, I went to all these ones that are replicas. I knew the second I saw them that they weren't the real thing. When I saw the spear, the spear of Longinus, the spear of Antioch, or the spear of love, as we call it, it absolutely healed me. I actually took it into bed with me and wrapped myself around it for some time. And strangely enough, it was right after that we had the event that it was burning hot, and then I got healed. And we've had it, and I've gone through some terrible scenarios that doctor said I should have died from, but I keep on staying alive. I attribute that to this holy relic. Now, what the lady in Patricia, right, in Hawaii?
Yes, Patricia.
What Patricia said in Hawaii, that's exactly what people tell us happens sometimes when we give them a second tier relic of the spear of Longinus in a handkerchief, basically it is. And all you have to do is just believe, and it will be a vehicle, because it's your belief. Because if you were a non-believer and you had this in your hand, would it change you? Probably not. But if you're a believer and you can reach into the spiritual world because you have a pure soul, then definitely this is the catalyst for that.
And if you happen to be in Southeast Michigan and you're one of our community members, you can contact us and bring us your special necklace or a piece of jewelry, and we're happy to place it on top of the spearhead so that you can then have a second tier relic of that sort. You could bring your Saint Benedict emblem, and we could double fortify it.
And if you think this is made up, let me tell you a little story about my friend Ariel and Aravinda. They went to Medjugorje, which there was the vision of Mary in Medjugorje. It still goes on to this very day. Every day at the same time, this happens. So it's been going on for many years. Well, she went there numerous times with Aravinda, and they would take silver, pure silver rosaries. And if they experienced the miracle of the sun or this visitation of Mary, people would watch these things turn to gold. So she literally showed me one once, and it was gold. And it wasn't because it turned brass colored or something. No, it went from being a very lightweight silver necklace. I had one just like it, and hers had been turned to gold. And as she's looking at this on the bus, strangely enough, they're coming back, and somebody starts yelling, look out the window. And they look out the window and they see this tree, and the tree has hundreds of red roses growing on it, which is, of course, not really possible. It's a big tree. So she grabbed her camera, took a picture of it, and I have it upstairs.
Yes, we have that picture.
It's a picture of Mary. Mary is standing there in front of this tree of roses. Well, the tree of roses can't really exist, of course. And it was just letting people say that she was going to manifest.
And it looks like it was a Polaroid. So there's no way that the taker could have altered this.
Oh, no. Once you see this, you know it's real. And it also gives you chills to hold it.
I should try and see if I can get a JPEG image to post sometime so people can see it. It's beautiful.
But there's lots of pictures like this. There's many pictures. Matter of fact, Ariel would collect these wherever she would go, because people would take pictures of the moment when the sun is spinning, or when the visionaries throw their head back and look up and start speaking with this angel, Mary, or an angel, whoever it is. And they take pictures at that point. And what do they see? The sun turns into the shape of Mary, in that standard shape of Mary blessing the world, right? And you go, well, and I'm a photographer. I was an award-winning photographer when I was young, and I know how to do double exposures. Those are not double exposures. That is not some weird thing. It is absolutely a spirit manifestation. And matter of fact, I have a few of these upstairs that she gave me copies of. And basically, there's no doubt in my mind that they're very real. So why is it that Mary always seems to appear whenever there are the true and the faithful? Because she's continually giving the same message. Y'all need to repent. You need to pray. You need to fast, because the apocalypse is coming. In every single case, those who see into heaven also see into hell. And so that's where we get these predictions that come from so many of these visitations of Mary and these visions, apparitions as they're called. And so it's the same story they always tell, and that's that there's going to be wars created by humans. And if we do not pray, it will end up bad. So in fact, during Fatima, it was said, when they revealed the letter that was given to the Pope, it was said that the sun was going to blink out in 1996 for 3 days. And then they gave you instructions. And the instructions sound exactly like a mini nova, by the way, in terms of gigantic aurora borealis vortices happening all over the earth because the magnetism is left. The sun blinks out for 3 days. That's what happens in a mini nova. It sends out the dark matter, basically the dust of space. And that torus shape brings the darkness to the earth for 3 days. And you don't go outside. Well, yeah, you better not go outside. And you better have consecrated beeswax candles, and expect to hardly be able to even stand up. And no matter who comes to your door, do not answer it, even if they sound like they're your mother or your father, because the demons will be trying to get in. And so these descriptions now are basically exactly what the catastrophists give us as an image of what we'll be facing. So one could get all worried and all fearful about all of this stuff. But the reality is, when it happens, there'll be a lot of Christians who think it's rapture, but it probably won't be rapture. And then remember, after this happens, the good people inherit the earth for 1,000 years. They get the white cloak that they put on, the white tunic. They learn the eternal song, and they preach the eternal gospel, and they are literally in direct contact with the Lion of Judah, or the Lamb of New Jerusalem. Well, that's exactly what Rudolf Steiner describes in the future. But sometimes we have these very telescoped views of the future because someone may be going through spiritual initiation and some kind of trauma, crossing the threshold because they can consciously do that. And you will see all of those things because they are written into the ethers. This is the way that the world is put together. And so when a person who has a revelation or an apocalypse, it uses the same exact images. Just take a look at Ezekiel, Daniel, and the apocalypse of St. John, the divine. It's basically the same story. It's the same story you get when people say that they die and go across the threshold. You'll have the same experience. So this is all happening. It's all concurrent. It's all basically, it's called heterochrony. It's all happening at one time. So an initiate is already living in the future, and someone who is devolving is simply living in the past. And what these things can do, if you believe that a relic is something from the past, and it may just keep you in the past, but if you believe that relic can spur you on to have spiritual insight that can lead you into the future, then it will. And so we can see that there are many, many types of relics, even ancient Hindu, Persian, all kinds of religions believe in these things, and they have holy objects. So if you don't have something like that, get the cross of St. Benedict, say a prayer over it, and it basically literally creates a continuous exorcism of Satan from your heart. That's why you wear it usually as a necklace over your heart.
And everybody can do that.
Yes.
So very good. Well, let's go get that apple pie out of the oven. I think you're going to like it. I was tasting it. It's not as sweet as the first version. You know how it is, ladies. You get a good recipe, you make it, you go, it's a little too sweet, a little this, you tweak it, and the second time it's a beautiful one. I'm practicing that because I think that'll be for our New Year's Day dinner. We have a big deal here at the house on New Year's Day because that's our Prosperity Day dinner. We've never missed it. And as those of you who've been with us for a while, you know it's all about Hoppin' Johns and pork. So shall we go?
Well, I just want to say your first apple crisp was delicious, so I can't wait to eat this.
I know,
one.
but this one's not as sweet. So I think it'll even be better for you.
And do you need me to help chop up that cabbage so we can make some sauerkraut?
Yeah, let's get in there and get it done.